A little while ago, we posted a video detailing a whole bunch of references made by the second half of Season 3 of Rick and Morty. Well, now that the season hiatus is officially in full swing, we've decided to revisit the first half of Season 3 for the same treatment. What's up everyone, I'm Jacob with channel Frederator, and today we're looking at references made by Rick and Morty Season 3, episodes 1 to 5. Get your abnormally large arms ready, resist the urge to shout that you're Pickle Rick, and let's get started. So where else would we start other than Season 3, Episode 1, The Rick Shank Rickdemption? The title of Season 3, Episode 1, The Rick Shank Rickdemption, is clearly a reference to The Shawshank Redemption, a novella written by Stephen King, but better known as a film directed by Frank Darabont starring Tim Robbins as a, according to his character, falsely accused man who attempts to break out of prison. Spoiler alert, he succeeds. And so does Rick in the season premiere. If you remember, we left off with Rick in intergalactic prison at the end of Season 2, and this episode follows his daring and masterful breakout. However, his mode of escape is far different from that of Tim Robbins. There's a little more body switching and a little less rockhammer digging. How could we leave out Mulan and McDonald's Szechuan sauce? As the episode makes apparent, Rick loves the Szechuan dipping sauce from the 1998 McDonald's promotion for the Disney movie Mulan, so much so that he, jokingly, names it as the real series arc, if it takes 9 seasons at the end of the episode. We first encounter the sauce at the start of the episode when a Gromflamites creature named Cornelius Daniel holds Rick captive in his own mind. He's trying to get the secret behind Rick's portal gun, but Rick makes the creature take him to a 1998-era McDonald's so that he can taste his beloved yet long expired sauce. Even the bug alien loves the dipping sauce, asking Rick at one point, "You said this was promoting a movie?" Luckily for a few real-life Szechuan sauce fans, back in August, McDonald's brought back the delicacy through a Twitter contest thanks to this popular Rick and Morty reference. Total Recall. As Rick and Cornelius Daniel bop around in Rick's mind at the start of the episode, there's plenty of references to real and fake memories. Rick uses the latter to trick his alien captor, for instance, by showing him a false memory in which he learns how to make his portal gun and then watches his family disappear. The questionable balance between real and fabricated histories brings to mind the film Total Recall, in which Arnold Schwarzenegger's character Douglas Quaid goes on a journey that takes him between real and fake memories, confusing the audience's perception like Rick does in Rick and Morty before we catch on. Speaking of sci-fi, there's also The Matrix to talk about. A brief reference, but The Matrix comes to mind when we see where Rick and his bug alien foe are in reality during this whole mind invasion session. They're passed out and hooked up to machines that transport them into Rick's mind world, and the machines look a lot like those that hook Keanu Reeves into The Matrix. The Hunger Games. Another version of summer is referred to as Hunger Games Summer, when the Morty and Summer that we're following escape to the Cronenberg universe, which has become more primitive and clearly lacking a Mockingjay. This title comes after the alternative family survived ruthlessly in the messed up world that C-137 Rick and Morty left them with. Gravity Falls. You're going to see a whole lot of Gravity Falls in Rick and Morty's third season. In this episode, at about 12 minutes and 33 seconds into the episode, when C-137 Morty and non-C-137 Summer are walking through the citadel of Rick's, they pass by a pair of Mortys that look very familiar if you're a fan of Gravity Falls. In the background on the left side of the screen, the two Mortys are wearing the same headband and hat that Mabel and Dipper Pines wear in every Gravity Falls episode. Next up, and premiering 4 months later, Season 3, Episode 2, Rickmancing the Stone. Romancing the Stone. Again, Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon never miss out on a classic episode title reference. Here, Rickmancing the Stone refers to Romancing the Stone, a 1984 movie about a romance novelist and an exotic bird smuggler, played by Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas respectively, who embark on a mission to retrieve a giant emerald. Similarly, Rickmancing the Stone revolves around Rick getting his hands on a big green stone, which he reveals is made of the powerful isotope 322 and may, some theorists believe, power his portal gun. Also, speaking of romance, Hemorrhage is wearing a Big Johnson t-shirt at the end of the episode, a sexual innuendo character which led to much controversy in the heat of the 90s. The Mad Max franchise. The post-apocalyptic world Rick, Morty, and Summer travel to in this episode closely resembles the world of Mad Max, vehicles and weapons most certainly included. The monster dude that Summer kills about 3 minutes into the episode has a similar mouth face mask situation thing to Mad Max Fury Road's Immortan Joe, the movie's main bad guy. Names used in the Rick and Morty episode also mirror those from Mad Max Fury Road, just like when Rick refers to Morty as Spine Eater. There's a People Eater, played by John Howard, in Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is referenced when the inhabitants of the Rick and Morty post-apocalyptic world have a fight dome that Rick immediately identifies as their Thunderdome. One of the world's inhabitants even replies, you mean the Blood Dome? Yeah, sure, just call it whatever you want, I guess. In addition, Rick orchestrates the Blood Dome fight using Morty as a pawn to distract everyone, while he attempts to get his hands on his precious isotope 322. In Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the character who rules the town where Mel Gibson as Max winds up uses Max as a pawn in a Thunderdome match that will serve to keep her in power and destroy her perceived threat. The threat is Master, and the fight is to take place against his bodyguard, Blaster. Westworld. Rick makes highly realistic robot versions of his grandkids which he can control with his voice. He uses language very similar to that used by Arnold and other robot engineers/technicians in Westworld, the TV show based on the 1973 film about a Wild West-themed amusement park populated by hyper-realistic robot hosts. Towards the end of the episode, when it's time for the robot versions of Morty, Summer, and now also Rick to go away since the human versions are returning, Robot Morty decides that he not only wants to be alive, but that he is alive. This essentially sums up the entire ethical debate posed by Westworld as the robots that populate the theme park start to gain consciousness. Cloud Atlas. The bucket-headed post-apocalyptic character Summer eventually marries in this episode uses language that sounds a bit like the lingo from Cloud Atlas. He uses doubles of certain words like the boom boom to name the apocalyptic event and the before time to talk about the time before it. In Cloud Atlas, the characters in one of the early time periods use phrases like the true to mean the truth and the far to mean very far. This may sound like a stretch, but Cloud Atlas is also referenced in season 1 when the Smith parents explore an alternate reality in which they hadn't had kids and gotten married. In it, Jerry is a famous actor who plays Tom Hanks' character in Cloud Atlas and uses the phrase the true. Game of Thrones. When a murdered man gains sentience in the form of one of Morty's arms, hereby dubbed Armathy, are you surprised? The arm's previous owner goes on a quest to seek revenge on the man who caused his and his family's deaths. When Morty finally finds him, he's a skinny blonde man with a bad haircut who's being bathed by two servants in a wood tub surrounded by candles. Vaguely resembling scenes of Daenerys' now long gone skinny blonde brother getting bathed, this Rick and Morty scene is mostly just full of Game of Thrones imagery and language. For example, the man in the tub threatens one of his washers by saying he will expel him to the wasteland. There is a wasteland, the Red Waste, in Game of Thrones, and that sounds like a very Game of Thrones threat. This could also be a reference to the Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, a bit that's part of Mystery Science Theater 3000, The Return, which Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland both have writing credits for. Season 3, Episode 3, Pickle Rick. Ironman. When Pickle Rick attaches rat parts to himself to create the destruction machine he becomes, do you hear that music in the background? Yeah, it sounds a lot like the music that plays in Iron Man when Robert Downey Jr. becomes Iron Man. The close-ups of Rick getting rat bones screwed into his pickle body also mimic the way Iron Man's armor slowly and dramatically clicks into gear. Die Hard. Once Pickle Rick escapes from the sewer, he naturally finds himself in a whole new world of trouble, this time in a building occupied by Russian bad guys, and they try to destroy Pickle Rick. In the film Die Hard, the bad guys are German, not Russian, but their leader, played by the late Alan Rickman, closely resembles the leader of the Russians in Pickle Rick's episode. The outfit of Rick's nemesis looks like Rickman's in Die Hard, and his tone and voice even sound similar. John Wick. It's a given that most of Rick's storyline is partly based on the John Wick films, a series following an ex-hitman coming out of retirement and swearing revenge on the gangster world. All crazy violence aside, Rick's nickname, Solenia, is most likely a reference to John Wick's nickname, Baba Yaga. Also, as a side note, the scene in which Rick slaughters all of the rats is a parody of 2009's The Wolverine, which was a film that inspired, you guessed it, John Wick. The Annoying Orange. When Rick calls for Morty in the beginning of the episode, it's a nod to the hit 2009 web series The Annoying Orange. The reference is further established given that Rick is a sentient vegetable, which is one step up from being a responsive fruit. Elvis Presley. Rick, thinking of his utterly humiliating fate dying in the body of a pickle, actually takes a jab at a certain other genius who died on the toilet. You guessed it, this is a reference to the infamous rumors of Elvis Presley's untimely death upon the common man's throne. By the way, he didn't actually die on the toilet. He died on the floor several feet away from the toilet, okay? Glad we could clear that up. Season 3, Episode 4, Vindicators 3, The Return of World Ender. The Avengers. Let's just get the obvious one aside. The Vindicators are an obvious homage to superhero teams from both Marvel and DC Comics, from the Avengers to the Justice League. The nail is driven through the head when Morty refers to the Vindicators as the Guardians of the Unguarded, which is actually also a playoff to another Marvel superhero team of a similar name. Also, the logo of the Vindicators closely resembles an upside-down Avengers symbol. Coincidence? Probably not. Saw. Rick's tricks are actually a whole reference to the Saw movie series, where individuals are forced to play dangerous games under a strict time limit by someone behind a screen, most often the killer Jigsaw himself. Morty even calls Rick out on this because really, Rick is a little more derivative than he would have you believe sometimes. Escape from LA. The 3-point shot skit references Escape from LA, where in one scene, Snake, the main protagonist, is similarly forced into scoring points in basketball within a limited amount of time, so it's horror meets meets Kurt Russell meets nostalgic adult humor compiled in an animated alcoholic. That's just Rick and Morty in a nutshell. I don't think that needs additional explaining, do you? Season 3, Episode 5, The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy. The Fly, The Big Chill, mostly Jeff Goldblum references. While Rick and Jerry sit at the bar in a resort with an immortality field built around it, Jerry points out a being that looks a lot like Jeff Goldblum's face. He and Rick even laugh together about it, a rare bonding moment for the pair. Rick then pokes fun at this Goldblum-resembling creature by saying, "What's up, Big Chill? Don't go into that telepod!" While Jeff Goldblum did star in the 1983 film The Big Chill, the second part of that remark references the 1986 movie that Goldblum starred in, The Fly, a remake in which a scientist accidentally transforms himself into a fly. Goldblum is said scientist, and he becomes a fly by accidentally entering a telepod that he created with a fly. The aim is to teleport himself from one telepod to another, but in doing so with a stowaway fly, Goldblum's character rearranges his molecular structure to merge with the flies. And now, hopefully, Rick's joke makes a lot more sense. Also, that movie is super weird. Alice in Wonderland. When Summer uses Rick's Morphizer XE, which acts as a grow ray, she ends up enlarging her whole body. Morty opens the door to the garage and he only sees her giant mouth and nose poking out. Summer's come to fill the entire garage, like Alice does in Alice in Wonderland when she drinks the Grow Me drink inside a little house. The way Alice pokes out of the windows and doors is clearly alluded to in Summer's garage growth scene. Speed. When the locals begin to attack Rick on the Whirly-Durly ride, they fight to the potential death on a moving vehicle. This is similar to the ending scene of Speed, the 1994 film with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, where at the end, Reeves' character, Jack, defeats the enemy by decapitating him on top of the subway car. In this Rick and Morty episode, Rick and his nemesis take turns beheading each other on a moving vehicle, but while in the immortality zone, so their heads just grow back. Home Improvement. Anyone remember Home Improvement? That 90s TV sitcom starring Tim Allen as Tim the Toolman Taylor? He made a lot of weird noises. Well, in the show, Tim's neighbor is Wilson W. Wilson, a man who always wears a tan bucket hat and is only seen peeking over the fence that separates his yard from the Taylors. In the Whirly-Durly Conspiracy, Morty speaks to a neighbor, Gene, who appears while he and Beth are figuring out how to deal with the summer issue. Gene pops up only briefly over the fence between his yard and the Smith's driveway, and he's wearing a distinct tan bucket hat. Attack on Titan. Inside out and enlarged by the end of the episode, Summer and Beth both bear a resemblance to the Colossal Titan in the manga series Attack on Titan. Like the Colossal Titan, who stands at about 200 feet tall, Summer and Beth tower above pine trees. And of course, there's the inside out part. The Colossal Titan wears his muscles and tendons on the outside, a look that Summer and Beth acquire after playing with Grandpa Rick's Morphizer XE. Once again, I'm Jacob, and thanks for watching Rick and Morty Season 3 References Episodes 1 to 5. Which shoutout was your favorite? Did we miss any? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad, and we have new videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe to channel Frederator, your Cartoon Central on the internet.